Just over 2 years ago, Steelwolf finally released Security Breach's only DLC, Ruin, and it smoothed much of the disappointment that came from the base game, but it also came with massive questions for the lore. MXES was one of these questions brought by the DLC, and it became a massive debate in the community. Despite the DLC seemingly explaining him at the end of the story, fans could not shake off the feeling that there was more to the Black Rabbit than what the game said. This feeling was verified in Secret of the Mimic, which gave us a direct origin for MXES, but at the same time, brought up new questions that only heightened the confusion and uncertainty about this character. So in this video, I'm going to be going into MXES, what we know about him, who he isn't, and the real answer that I personally believe solves him once and for all. This will also be the final part of my Glitch Trap series, but the past 2 videos will not be required to understand this one, but I will reference them somewhat, so if you want to, make sure to check them out after this video. But before I go any further, I got to remind you that thanks to your support, we now have memberships for the channel. Only 2 tiers currently, but the Adept tier gives you shoutouts, polls to side feature videos, and more, while the Ecstatic tier gives you access to videos early and members-only content. So if that interests you, the option is there. If you enjoyed the video though, don't forget to like and leave a comment down below, support the channel and the video, and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I appreciate all support you could give. Now let's get right into the theory. Before we get into any speculation, we should first establish what we know for sure about MXES. MXES was first introduced in the Security Breach DLC Ruin. He was first shown after Cassie gained the Vanity Mask and wore it for too long, appearing as a black rabbit with green and purple aberration, who either jump scares Cassie or slowly approaches her wherever she is. If he catches up to you, he will alert a nearby animatronic with a distress signal to your location, resulting in your death. Throughout the DLC, Gregory refers to MXES as Thing, and likewise, Cassie refers to him as a Rabbit Thing. Helpy, however, calls him an anomalous or unknown entity. I find this to be interesting, since MXES seems to be integrated to the piece-of-play security systems, to the point that the nodes Helpy wants you to repair has his image on them if you look at them. So based on that knowledge, it would seem that we know that MXES is a part of the security systems, but also isn't meant to be there or is known to exist by Fazbear Entertainment, as implied by Helpy's confusion. Regardless, he tries to get you killed by the animatronics until you manage to disable him in the sinkhole before meeting the Mimic, resulting in being sucked back to his machine as he tries to grab you one last time. After you escape the Mimic and get into the elevator, the real Gregory explains that MXES was actually a system designed to keep the Mimic contained, but since you disabled him, the Mimic is now fully free and able to escape. Moving on now to Secret of the Mimic, we discover through emails that MXES originates from a program called the Cradle, which M1 created blueprints for and sent to Edwin. She tells him that it's a computer unlike anything he's ever built before, and it's meant to keep M2 within boundaries and constraints so he and the others are safe, presumably until Edwin fixes him, which she wanted him to do. In the canonical ending, we activate Cradle.exe and learn on said computer that MXES stands for Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage Number 2, or since X-Form usually stands for Transform, it should be Mechanical Transform Experimental Storage Number 2. And lastly, in Help 1-2's update, we see MXES again. When inputting the 4625 frequency on the keypad, MXES comes out of the machine briefly before he's driven off and taken from MCM, leaving what happened to him up for complete mystery. Now, if you were a normal person, you would probably think that's about it, with MXES being a computer designed to keep M2 contained in the ruins of MCM, later becoming integrated into Fazbear security systems and attempting to prevent Cassie from freeing M2, being all but a misunderstood hero. But for me, a person who hasn't taken normal pills in a very long time, that isn't enough. I mean, it's kind of justifiable. How does the Cradle in 1979 become this black rabbit entity working with infected animatronics and infiltrating Fazbear security? Why is he labeled as evil? Why is he associated with green and purple? Was MXES upgraded to modern standards? Who gave him his current form? Who did the upgrade? And who took MXES from MCM in Help 1-2's update? There's just a massive disconnect between what we see in Ruin and what is told to us in Secret of the Mimic. And while we do see major aspects of his original character and purpose, it's very clear that something has changed. So what did change? Who truly is MXES really? Well, let's find out. The first step to answering who MXES is first determining who MXES isn't, and oh man, there are some options. But I won't be covering that all by myself. Frederick Fazbear has returned to give an analysis on why MXES cannot be any of these characters, so let's give it right to him.
Thanks, Draz. Now, here's a special segment from Fazbear Entertainment headquarters on our proprietary tech, MXES. So, to answer who MXES isn't, we need to look at the characterization of the entity in MXES alongside the characterization of its potential candidates, starting with Henry Emily. Now, I don't believe there's a whole lot of people who believe this to begin with, however, it had been proposed previously that Henry built MXES, and so I figured I'd address it. We can say with a good amount of certainty now, after Secret of the Mimic, that Henry did not build MXES, as we can see either the same exact machine with F10N4, or at the very least the same type of machine that was created by Edwin Murray in the 70s. So, logic would dictate that MXES itself was also made in the same time frame, and by the same person. Now, this doesn't make it impossible for the entity itself to be Henry, however, MXES does send animatronics after Cassie that are clearly aggressive, that do end up killing her if they catch her. And this seems to be one of the last things Henry would want. He's not a killer. He laments everything William did, and I sincerely doubt he would even consider sending animatronics after a child after everything that happened. So, does that mean it could be Edwin? He did design the machines, and we know he's morally questionable.
Test. Journal entry. I got the change order from Hen last night. None of this makes sense. I'm almost done. Why change it now? It would be so much easier to keep using the spring locks. Just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do.
Well, having poor business practices in regards to safety, again, doesn't really fit this seeming maliciousness. Also, while Edwin does seemingly want to stop M2, it's not within his character to risk the life of a child to do so, especially not after he'd lost David. So, then, that leaves us with the seeming most obvious answer. That being Fiona, or M1, or F10N4, however else you want to go about calling her. There are several things that line up. She wanted to stop M2. She was last seen in the same type of machine. So there shouldn't be any reason for it not to be her, right? Slam dunk. Well, here's where it can get kinda tricky. Fiona did seemingly want to stop M2, but never as her primary motive. What Fiona really wanted was to get David back, which would mean fixing M2. The entire plot of the game is centered around fixing the Mimic, and yet MXES is explicitly told to us to be something designed to keep the Mimic hidden. If F10N4 in Secret of the Mimic met the MXES entity, she would likely be hostile towards it, since what it's doing is the complete opposite of what Fiona wants. Now, I hear you. She designed the Cradle program to limit the Mimic. She does care about keeping people safe from it. But to this I ask, does she really? She explicitly tells Arnold that he will not survive if he runs parachute. She threatens him and mocks him, goes into detail about which costume the Mimic will pick to stuff him into, and from that point, it seems flippant about the whole situation, since she knows Fazbear will send more until they get what they want.
Area is off limits. You have made your choice. You are not going to make it out of here alive. You could have helped. If you had just given me the schematics, we could have fixed things.
I thought you were different. I thought you might understand. But you're just like the others. The other technicians, the workers. They didn't listen, and it caught them all. Now it's your turn to play dress up. When he catches you, which one will he choose? Who are you deep down inside? Another worker bee? A bumbling bee? Perhaps a busy bee? In many ways, tonight has been a comedy of errors. A jester would suit you well. Or a bunny, running from danger, scared and stupid, searching for a hole to hide in.
She's using the Fazbear employees as expendable pawns for her to use, as indicated by Arnold possessing a chess piece in his van, alongside the active chess game going on in Edwin's office. So, does she really care about keeping people safe? Or is that just something she told Edwin to manipulate him into doing what she wants? Now, I get it, it could be both. she can manipulate people and be willing to sacrifice a few to ultimately fix M2 and stop him for the greater good. But there again lies our problem. Her entire personality is fixing M2, which required manipulation and lies to trick people into doing it for her since she couldn't. But with MXES, we see that the entity actively discourages people from interacting with the Mimic, and its entire purpose is to keep its existence hidden, which is a complete conflict of interest from M1. Now, another interesting thing to note, there are definitively two different MXES type machines in Secret of the Mimic, and we know this because of these two logs. One where we learn what MXES stands for, the machine that runs Cradle.exe, and the other that contains the blueprints for the Mimic. If we look at the machine running Cradle, it's called Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage number 1, whereas the machine housing the blueprints is called Experimental Storage number 2. So what does this mean? Well, if we know that MXES was designed to keep the Mimic hidden, as is said in Ruin, and MXES number 1 runs Cradle, the thing designed to somehow limit the Mimic, that means that MXES number 1 is the one that we see in Ruin. So what does this mean for MXES number 2? Well, we know that the F10N4 machine is the one that was developing blueprints, or at least the AI currently housed within it, and MXES 2 is where we receive the Mimic blueprints. This then means that MXES 1 is the machine housing the Rabbit entity in Ruin designed to limit/hide the Mimic, and MXES 2 is F10N4, which means that we've actually seen both machines just at different points in time. F10N4 is missing in Ruin, and MXES is missing in Secret of the Mimic. Now, if the location under Ruin is MCM, then this makes a bit of sense, because it's not super familiar to anywhere we see in Ruin, meaning it could have been in this location the whole time. Regardless, just because these two things look really similar, it doesn't inherently mean that they are the same, just that they are related in some way. Well, now that we've covered that, I'll hand it back over to Draz.
Massive thank you to Phasma Entertainment for coming on to cover who MXES cannot be. Make sure to check out the channel down below in the description. With that question out of the way, let's now move on to what I believe the games are trying to hint to us as to who MXES really is. Now, what I believe to be the true identity of MXES will be controversial to many people, but I truly believe this is what the games are trying to tell us on who he is, and I will explain and make it make sense towards the end of the video. Let's start by first asking the question, is MXES actually good, or is he evil? Well, you may say,
of course he's a good guy. He was trying to stop the Mimic from escaping, wasn't he?
and well, yes, but that doesn't mean he's good per se. MXES actively tries to get Cassie killed by controlling the animatronics and using signals to bring them to the player. That doesn't seem so good to me. His appearance and behavior are even depicted as very menacing, taunting and watching you, not killing you directly himself, but using other animatronics. His merch also describes him as evil in all the descriptions. And I mean, come on, his original cut design just gives off evil energy. Look at this. So, if MXES is evil and isn't merely a misunderstood containment program, what and who is he? Well, with the previous context clues, you're very likely thinking of Afton, as he is an evil black rabbit associated with purple, and his original design is literally an evil purple rabbit. And that conclusion isn't wrong. It's pretty close to what I'll say, but I want to first turn your attention to Glitchtrap and the connections MXES has to him. Without restating the previous points, MXES is the one controlling or influencing the Glamlock animatronics in Ruin, which we know were infected by the Glitchtrap virus, causing them to be violent. Which begs the question, if M2 is Gregory and M1 is presumably healthy, as I mentioned in my previous video, how can either of them be solely Glitchtrap? They're trying to use Cassie to free M2 in the sinkhole, so if either of them were Glitchtrapped directly, why are they trying to kill Cassie before getting what they want from her? The Glitchtrap-infected animatronics alongside MXES have directly conflicting goals with both mimics, with M1 wanting to free M2, and M3 of course wanting to free themselves, and Glitchtrap and MXES are trying to prevent that directly, making them in opposition. This would seem to mean that MXES is connected to Glitchtrap, controlling the animatronics as a glitchy rabbit trying to kill Cassie. Alongside that, the entity is also called Anomaly or Anomalous Entity, which is nearly identical to the way Glitchtrap was called the Anomaly in Hut 1.1, potentially implying a deeper relation between the two characters. That's not all. my good friend Fazbear Entertainment discovered an intriguing connection in Security Breach's therapy tapes, so let's hand it right back to him.
Hey, thanks Draz. Always happy to promote the good name of Fazbear Entertainment whenever I can. So let's get right into the tapes. Now, there's a couple of things we know about Gregory's AI possession that we can determine using the therapy tapes. At some point, he either develops his own or uses an existing mimic program that asks him questions and prompts answers, which to me would be indicative of him being in contact with M2, since we know it uses his voice in Ruin. But at some point, around the time the glitch takes over the Pizzaplex, the entity talking to Gregory suddenly swaps to someone else's voice. Now, with the obvious connection of the glitch taking over the Pizzaplex and causing the animatronics to act differently, we can confidently say this means that M2 was either corrupted, which is unlikely considering the continued discrepancies between Glitchtrap and M2 further down the line, or that the entity that is Glitchtrap took over communications and started talking to Gregory instead. Now, we actually do receive some information that supports this, as after this point in the timeline of the glitch taking over the systems, Gregory starts talking to what is described as something or someone that appears to look like a rabbit. Now, most people would just assume Vanessa, however, this rabbit entity doesn't really fit that description. Vanessa, when appearing as Vanny, still looks entirely human, just as a person wearing a costume. That's where the creep factor with hers and Glitchtrap's designs come from. You can tell it's obviously just a person behind a mask. But this entity talking to Gregory seems like it might not even be human at all. So, is it Glamrock Bonnie? Well, I'd say no, since the swap to Monty seems to still have happened prior to this, and you'd think with Glamrock Bonnie, it'd be pretty recognizable, being one of the lead animatronics of the Pizzaplex. So then, what is Gregory talking to? Well, this rabbit is described as messing with the camera, making it appear blurry. Now, I want to ask, what entities do we know of that are unfamiliar looking, take the form of a rabbit, and can distort and mess with technology in the Pizzaplex? Ding ding ding, that's right, it's MXES, which means that if this entity is being related to Glitchtrap in the tapes, MXES should then somehow be connected to Glitchtrap. So I'll hand it back over to Draz to delve further into how they could be connected.
Once again, massive thanks to Fazbear Entertainment for coming on and helping with production and evidence for this video. Make sure to check out his channel down below in the description. Now though, returning to the video, if that is true, it means Gregory, who we know becomes GGY, possessed by Glitchtrap, was seemingly talking to MXES when he became possessed, almost as if MXES, following his original programming, prevented M2 from communicating with Gregory, but this time with an evil possession twist. By this point in the video, you might be able to tell what all this is leading to. It would seem that MXES is Glitchtrap in some way, which does bring up a lot of questions, such as how, what, and why. Well, I'll get to that, but to seal the deal, I'll go through a few more pieces of evidence that I think solidifies this connection. As I spoke of earlier, MXES is integrated into Fazbear security, to the very point that the nodes have the appearance of a rabbit that resembles MXES. Yet, for some reason, Helpy acts as if the entity isn't meant to be there, despite the entity literally being MXES. This was always very weird to me, but we do know Glitchtrap infected and nearly completely controlled the entire Pizzaplex. So, if MXES is in some way Glitchtrap, this would explain how he could be the Fazbear security system, but also why his entity form was unknown to Fazbear Entertainment. Just like Glitchtrap, he was hidden from their view, yet was infecting and controlling everything from behind the scenes. Additionally, and all credit to average FNaF fan on Twitter for this, but when you enter Glamrock Body's room and go through the vent, you go down a glitchy AR tunnel, and as you get closer to the end, you see an AR highlight of the Glitchtrap plush before MXES appears, screaming and taking you to the room with the PQ machine, with the glitch blob nearby on the wall, which itself by the way is pretty weird, but it may be connecting MXES to the Glitchtrap plush and what you see in the room, Princess Quest and the glitch blob, which both are related to Glitchtrap. So overall, we have many things that connect the MXES entity to Glitchtrap, with his appearance as a black rabbit, his association with purple being on the side of the Glitchtrap infected animatronics, and MXES seemingly being who Gregory may have spoken to when possessed by Glitchtrap, and most importantly, Ruin Boy. But you're probably asking, how is any of this possible? How can MXES be Glitchtrap? When and how did this happen? How is this tied to Glitchtrap's death, which does precede the events of Ruin? And if purple ties MXES to Glitchtrap FNaF then Then what does the green mean? Well, all of that will be explained now. So I hope I made a good case on why I think MXES may be glitch-trapped, but the big question is, how do we make this work exactly? How could this guy be this guy? Well, the key to that is somewhat related to my previous glitch trap video, where I theorized that glitch trap is a duo of Afton and M1, but also that it's more complex than we think. I argue that Afton obtained the mimic schematics, and with those schematics, created his own mimic called N3, and locked it to his identity as William Afton, and after FNaF 6, this N3 becomes what we know as glitch trap, being the prime virus. N3, thinking like Afton, wants to reunite with his body, merging himself with Burntrap, bringing Afton back fully, only later to be foiled by Gregory and also the Help Wanted 2 player, resulting in the death of Glitchtrap and seemingly this N3 AI. The big question you may be asking is, how does this relate to MXES at all? Well, the key here is in Help Wanted 2's update, which was meant to tease Secret of the Mimic. In the update, when inputting the 4625 frequency into a Phasma Advanced keypad, MXES comes out, lunges at us, before being taken away from MCM. This begs the question, who took MXES away and why? It's very possible, if not very likely, that this will be answered in a future DLC for Secret of the Mimic, but with the current information we have now, the only answer that makes sense to me is Afton. After all, Afton is the one who ruined Edwin's company, stole his employees, took his building, and probably his house. He also stole his technology and was likely the one who wanted the Mimic schematics to begin with, having Dispatch send technicians to retrieve it for him. He would obviously want anything he could grab, so of all possible culprits, Afton is the only one with the motives and means to steal MXES in 1979. If so, I think this explains a lot about MXES, as MXES was designed by M1 as the cradle, meant to keep M2 contained and also keep him and others safe, and by Ruin, is connected to everything and has a modern AR form of an evil-looking rabbit, and tries to kill kids, so he's obviously gone far beyond his original programming, which if Afton had taken MXES very early on, would be a clear and easy reason why. If we assume that Afton wanted to replicate what Edwin did, he may have meddled with the MXES machine, using it as a computer base for his own mimic, N3, reshaping it into his image, causing it to think like him, to have a similar form to him, to have similar if not the same motives as him. This explains why he's associated with purple and green chromatic aberration. The purple represents his Afton or glitch-trap side, the corruption Afton caused, but since MXES is a similar computer to F10, which houses mimic code, the green represents his mimic side and original purpose as the cradle designed by F10-4 to keep M2 safe and contained. He never lost his original purpose or mission, it was just used by Afton for his own plans. In this way, John FNaF was right that the purple and green represent a duality, but it wasn't Afton and Charlie, but rather Afton and the Mimic. Perhaps this is why in Help Wanted, Glitchtrap has this green aura and effect around him, while also having purple eyes and later being represented as purple. He is a blend of the Mimic and Afton directly, which fits very well if this also applies to MXES. What this means is, in Help Wanted 2, when you kill Glitchtrap, you kill N3, the entity that thought it was William Afton and brought him back from his UCN nightmare. This, however, doesn't kill the computer, aka MXES, it just reverts him closer to his original state, with his prime motive being to keep him contained at all costs. Afton's legacy doesn't leave so easily though. He still maintains his rabbit persona and other corruptions, but he isn't Glitchtrap any longer. This to me is a very satisfying answer for what MXES is and how he ties to Glitchtrap. Just in case you got a little confused along the way, I'll give a summary of today's theory. I believe in the late 1970s, MXES was designed by M1 to be the cradle, to keep M2 contained, safe, and harmless. She sent this blueprint to Edwin, who of course built it before he got blown up. Later, the events of Secret of the Mimic happens, and the place burns down after MXES is activated by Arnold. Sometime after this, Afton eventually steals the machine, corrupting it and turning it into his own mimic computer and AI. This N3 later becomes Glitchtrap and eventually finds Burntrap's body, freeing Afton from his UCN nightmare, and potentially even merges with Afton's soul directly. Regardless of what happens, Burntrap gets taken out by the Blob, and Glitchtrap gets severely weakened when PQ3 is completed. Glitchtrap later dies in Help Wanted 2, reverting MXES from being N3 to what he was always originally designed to do, keep M2 contained at all costs, but Afton's lingering corruption is still very evident in his design, personality, and control over the animatronics. And that's all I got for you in this video. I'm pretty satisfied with this theory. It's not perfect by any means, so feel free to point out any issues you may have with it. While NOT could simply just be a containment program, and these connections like his rabbit persona don't really mean anything, I feel it's always worth considering and proposing new ideas with all the relevant details. So make sure to comment down below with your theories and thoughts on NOT and how you may or may not relate the glitch trap. Commenting also supports the video, so I really appreciate any support that's given. Besides that, I got some minor to moderate news to give to y'all for the future of the channel. I may be trying to branch out from theory content in the future just to have more variety for the channel. Maybe analog stuff or Halo in October, it just depends. So if that interests you, be sure to hit the notification bell for any future uploads. Additionally, I'm starting school, so uploads may be slower. For now, all my classes are online, so it won't be that bad, but I will be adjusting, so do expect some slower uploads. Now with that news out of the way, remember, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you like my content. A big video is coming up very soon, and I think you'll all really enjoy it if you like these glitch trap videos. That's all I got for you though. See you next time.